This isn't about glory or victory or even faith. It's about a spoon dipped into something sacred, dangerous and alive. Promethium, the lifeblood of the Imperium and the death of those who mishandle it. It began in Refinery Sector 9 Delta, a labyrinth of pipes, tanks, and flames where workers chanted prayers to pressure gauges and fuel lines. Every drop of promethium was holy, blessed fire distilled from the Emperor's will. To spill it was sin. To steal it was heresy. Worker First Class Bren Malvik didn't care much for heresy. He cared about rations. The refinery had been running low and workers were told to endure. But endurance doesn't fill a stomach. And when hunger clawed too deep, Bren looked at the thick amber fluid dripping from a maintenance valve and thought, maybe just a taste. He dipped a spoon, a single spoonful of promethium, still warm, still glowing faintly from the distillation chamber. It smelled like metal and prayer smoke. He whispered a quick apology to the Emperor and drank. The first sensation was fire, not heat, but purpose. It burned his throat, his chest, his thoughts. He fell to his knees, trembling, muttering phrases he didn't understand. The others laughed at first, until the lights flickered. Every machine in the room began to hum the same pitch Bren's voice made. The servo skulls turned to look at him. The refinery's alarms didn't sound. Instead, a single line of text appeared on the central display. Subject refined. By the time the overseers arrived, Bren was gone. In his place, a small pool of molten promethium shimmered beneath a still smoking spoon. The priests declared it a miracle, a human spirit merged with the holy fuel. Now the refinery burns hotter than ever. They say sometimes when the flames surge too bright, a voice whispers in the roar, a worker's voice murmuring from inside the fire, "I only wanted a taste." So, this story isn't about soldiers or saints or glory. It's about a guy named Bren Malvik and a spoon. Yeah, just a spoon. And what he decided to do with it. He worked in this place called Refinery Sector 9 Delta. Imagine a maze of pipes, tanks, and fire that never stops burning. The air there. It's not air, really. It's smoke and heat and prayer all mixed together. Every sound you hear is a hiss, a clang, or a whisper of steam. And for the people inside, the workers, this wasn't a factory. It was a temple. They prayed to machines, to pressure gauges, to fuel lines. They believed promethium, that thick, glowing liquid that powers everything in the Imperium, was holy, sacred fire. The Emperor's own breath turned into fuel. And to spill it, that was a sin. To steal it, that was heresy. But to drink it, no one ever even thought about that. Bren wasn't the type to think too hard about sin or faith. He was just tired, hungry, like everyone else down there. He'd been assigned to Line 4 Beta for 11 years, working valves, checking gauges, keeping the pressure right. His record was clean. He said the prayers, did the work, day after day, shift after shift. The same sound, the same smell, the same heat pressing against your face until you stopped feeling it. And then one month, the rations got cut. It started small, half portions, fewer breaks. The kind of thing you grumble about but keep going. Then it got worse. Notices started showing up on the walls. Due to supply delays, caloric rations are reduced. Endurance is faith. Endurance is faith. That's what they told them. But endurance doesn't fill your stomach. People started trading things. Old tools, boots, even the grease-off servo servitors if it had any calories left. Nobody complained out loud. You don't complain in the Imperium. You just keep your head down and you work. But one night, Bren couldn't take it anymore. He was on the late shift, the refinery half asleep, lights dim, air thick with the smell of burned oil. He was adjusting this old brass valve, one of those ancient ones that probably hadn't been replaced in a century, and he noticed something, just this little drip coming from the joint. A slow, amber drop. It wasn't leaking, exactly, just weeping. One drop at a time, glowing faintly like honey in red light. He stared at it for a while. Something about it looked alive. The color, the glow, even the smell. Metal and incense, like something divine. And for a second, he forgot it was fuel. He just thought, what would it taste like? He checked around. Nobody was watching. The other workers were half asleep, reciting maintenance prayers on repeat. The servo skulls drifted past, whispering machine litanies. So Bren reached into his tool pouch and pulled out his spoon. A standard issue ration spoon, stamped with the cogwheel symbol. He'd eaten every meal of his life with that thing. And now, he held it under the leak. The spoon hissed when the promethium hit it. 3 drops. 4. The metal started to glow faintly orange. He hesitated for a second, then whispered under his breath, "Emperor, forgive me. I only need a little." And he drank. The second that promethium touched his tongue, he knew he'd made a mistake. It wasn't just hot, it was alive. It felt like swallowing lightning, like fire and purpose all mixed together. His whole body tensed, his eyes watered. He dropped the spoon, gasping for air. The world around him started to shake. He could hear it, this low hum rising inside his chest, matching the pitch of the refinery itself. The pipes, the valves, the fuel lines, all vibrating at the same frequency as him. Then the lights flickered. The servo skulls stopped midair, turning to face him, and the refinery's central display, this giant screen that usually showed pressure levels and purity stats, suddenly went blank. Then a single line appeared across it in glowing red text, "Subject refined." Bren fell to his knees. The hum got louder. The whole place felt like it was breathing with him, or through him. He saw his reflection in the puddle spreading beneath his hands. His skin looked like it was glowing, not from the light, from inside. And then everything went white. When the overseers arrived, he was gone, completely. All they found was that same spoon, still smoking, and a small pool of molten promethium, shimmering like liquid gold on the floor. Subdeacon Laren came down personally. He kneeled beside the puddle, muttered a prayer, and dipped his finger in it. It burned, but he didn't even flinch. "The Emperor refines all impurities," he said, "even the impure man." And that was that. They sealed the area, logged it as divine occurrence. No investigation, no body. But after that, the refinery changed. The flames burned hotter, the fuel purer, almost too pure. And sometimes, when the tanks roared a little louder than usual, workers swore they heard something inside the fire. A whisper, a human voice, low, soft. They said the fire changed after that night. Nobody said it out loud at first, because in a place like Sector 9 Delta, you don't talk about miracles unless a priest tells you to, but everyone felt it. The heat coming off the furnaces didn't just burn, it pulsed, like something breathing. The next morning, when the shift sirens wailed and the workers lined up for the daily litany, you could feel it in the air, the tension, the whispers, the smell of scorched metal still hanging from the night before. The subdeacon was there early, kneeling beside the melted patch on the floor where Bren had vanished. The spoon was gone. Someone had taken it, probably locked it away in one of the shrine vaults. But the heat coming from that spot, it hadn't cooled down, not even a little. During the litany, one of the older workers, a man named Rethan, I think, spoke up. He asked if they should mark the area with purity seals, just to be safe. The subdeacon didn't answer right away. He just stared into the furnace glow like he was waiting for something to speak through him. Then he said quietly, "No seals. No barriers. Let it burn. If this is the Emperor's will, it will sanctify itself." That's when people started calling it the Holy Flame. You have to understand, in the Imperium, when something unexplainable happens, there are only two options. Either it's heresy, or it's a miracle. And since nobody wanted to be purged, everyone decided this was a miracle. The priests came down from the upper shrines, real ones, with gold masks and rebreather robes. They stood around the furnace chamber, whispering to each other, taking readings, writing symbols in the soot. They said Bren Malvik had been chosen, that the Emperor, in his infinite fire, had refined him into something purer than flesh, a spirit of fuel. The workers just nodded. Nobody dared to argue. But when the night shifts came, when the priests were gone and the machines hummed low, that's when people started hearing it. It wasn't loud. It started like a vibration, a faint echo under the hiss of the pipes. Then, if you stood still long enough, you could make out words. Not clear words, just pieces of them. A breath, a syllable. Burn. Hotter. Not enough. One of the women on Valve Line Gamma swore she heard her name whispered. Another said the flame flickered in time with his heartbeat. And the strangest part? The refinery started performing better than it ever had. The fuel output doubled. The purity ratio broke records. Even the Mechanicus tech adepts couldn't explain it. Every gauge read perfect, every pressure line stable. They called it the blessing of Sector 9-Delta. Of course, not everyone was so sure. One of the junior overseers, Karen, filed a report, said the systems were behaving too perfectly, claimed the refinery was thinking for itself. The next day he was reassigned. No explanation, just gone. That's how things worked down there. You ask the wrong question and suddenly the Emperor had a new plan for your shift assignment. After that, nobody questioned anything. They just kept working and praying. Because that's what you do in the Imperium. You keep your head down. You pray louder when things get strange. And you never, ever touch the fuel. But people can't help being curious. A week after Bren disappeared, one of the young maintenance acolytes, barely 16, tried to collect a sample from the same pipe. He said he just wanted to test it. For purity, he told the foreman. When he opened the valve, the promethium came out like it was alive, twisting, moving up the pipe against gravity, like a flame trying to reach him. He dropped his tools, screaming. His sleeve caught fire, and not just burning, but burning inward. They said his body turned to ash in less than a minute. No one found bones, just a smear of black dust and the faint smell of ozone. The priests called it another sign. They said the Emperor's spirit was moving through the refinery now, and that the workers had to obey whatever it demanded. From then on, the refinery changed. They stopped calling it 9-Delta. They renamed it the Shrine of Combustion. The banners went up. New purity seals, new hymns. The daily litany wasn't "feed the tanks, seal the lines" anymore. Now it went, "He who burns serves, he who refines ascends." And when they prayed to the flame itself. The priest said they could hear responses in the roar, faint rhythmic murmurs beneath the noise. Nobody could prove it, but everyone swore it sounded like a man's voice, a worker's voice. And once, during a shift inspection, one of the overseers said he saw a reflection move across the furnace glass. It looked like a human face, just for a second. Then it was gone. By the end of that month, the refinery's output had tripled. Other sectors started sending delegations to study it, how it burned, how it never broke down, how no one ever needed maintenance anymore. The priests said it was a miracle of faith, but the workers knew better. They said Bren was still in there, that his voice was the hum in the pipes, that his breath was the fuel itself, and that the refinery wasn't praying to the Emperor anymore. It was praying for him. Beautiful. We're continuing the Rith. By the third week after Bren vanished, the refinery didn't feel like a refinery anymore. It felt alive, not in a poetic way, not alive like a place full of people, but alive like an animal, something that breathed, something that listened. You could feel it in the floor, every vibration, every hum from the pipes. It had rhythm now, not mechanical rhythm, heart rhythm. And the strangest part? It started following voices. One night, during the maintenance rotation, a worker named Hesh was cursing under his breath, just muttering like everyone did when a bolt got jammed. He said, "Burn this damn pipe already." And the pipe, the one he was working on, actually heated up. Not enough to explode, but enough that he jumped back, screaming. At first, everyone laughed, said it was coincidence, static discharge. But then another guy tested it, whispered the same thing, half joking, and the valve right next to him let out a short hiss, like it responded. After that, nobody joked anymore. The priests called it a communion. They said the refinery was becoming attuned to the faith of its workers, reacting to words, thoughts, even prayers. They gathered everyone in the central chamber, lined them up in rows, and started chanting the litany of combustion. Normally, it was just a routine prayer, a background noise, something to keep the machine's spirits calm. But this time, every time they said a line, the refinery answered. When they chanted, "Blessed be the fuel that feeds the Emperor's fire," the flames in the furnaces flared. When they said, "Through purification we are made useful," the pressure gauges twitched in perfect unison. By the third verse, people were crying. The priests called it a miracle of obedience. But some of the older workers, the ones who'd been around long enough to know the smell of something wrong, started whispering a different idea. They said this wasn't obedience, it was awareness. Then came the first voice. Not from the priests, not from the speakers, from inside the refinery itself. It was faint, just a single low tone, like the sound of gas rushing through metal. But it had shape. You could hear words forming, buried under the roar. "Still here." Everyone froze. The sound repeated, softer this time, but clearer. "I'm still here." And that's when they all heard it, Bren's voice. The same way he used to sound on shift, that low, tired tone, like a man who never slept enough. Some screamed, some fell to their knees. The subdeacon just stared at the furnace, whispering prayers faster and faster, his voice shaking. The priests called it the voice of refinement. They said it was proof that Bren's soul had merged with the holy Promethium, that he'd become one with the Emperor's divine energy. But the workers, they didn't think it was holy. They thought it was hungry. After that day, strange things started happening. Fuel requests from other sectors kept arriving, but every time they tried to siphon Promethium out of 9 Delta, the pipes refused. Literally refused. The valves jammed, the flow reversed, gauges cracked. Like the refinery didn't want to give it away. When the priests ordered a full system purge to recalibrate the tanks, the control cogitators went offline for a full minute. And when they came back, the data display showed one new entry at the bottom. Access denied, by order of subject, refined. They all stared at it in silence. Nobody dared move. That night, the overseer on duty, a man named Talon, stayed late, trying to run diagnostics manually. He kept muttering to himself the way people do when they're exhausted. He said, "If this thing's alive, talk to me then." "What do you want?" The air shifted. The flame inside the furnace bent, actually bent, like it was turning toward him, and a voice came through the static of the nearby Vox unit. "Feed me." Talon backed away, pale. "Feed you what?" he whispered. "Faith," the voice said, "and flesh." The Vox shorted out immediately after. They found him the next morning, unconscious, eyes burned white from exposure to the glow. He lived, but he didn't talk again. Just kept repeating the same words over and over. "He's in the fire. He's still burning." After that, the priests changed everything. They banned all access to the lower refinery levels. They declared it a sanctified zone, only clergy and tech adepts allowed inside. They said the rest of the workers were to continue their duties in silence. No talking near the tanks, no prayers unless ordered, no looking directly at the flames. They renamed Bren again, officially this time, Saint Bren of the Ember Tongue, the man who became fire. They even carved his name into the shrine wall, painted in oil and ash. But if you stood near that wall long enough, you'd hear something behind it. A soft hum, almost like breathing. And sometimes, if the light hit the steel just right, you could see a faint reflection moving in the glow, like someone pressing their face against the metal from the other side, and whispering, "It's not over yet." After Bren became Saint Bren of the Ember Tongue, life in the refinery went on. At least, that's what they told themselves. Work, pray, endure, the same routine. But it didn't feel the same anymore. The refinery had changed, and everyone knew it. You could hear it when you walked the corridors. Pipes that used to hum at a steady tone now whispered. Not air pressure, not steam. Whispers, soft, muffled words that followed you as you moved. Sometimes it sounded like your own name. Sometimes it sounded like Bren's. And no one talked about it. The priest said the refinery had become spiritually resonant, that it was communing with the faithful. But the workers called it something else. They called it the murmuring. It started simple, quiet, random noises through the vents. But over time, it got organized, coordinated. One shift, a worker on line beta swore he heard the pipes reciting the morning prayer by themselves, word for word. Another said he heard crying, a woman's voice trapped somewhere deep in the wall, sobbing softly through the metal. The servo skulls picked up the sounds too. Their Auspex readings showed unidentified vocal activity in multiple zones. But when the priests reviewed the recordings, the files were corrupted, every time. Then something happened that changed everything. A worker named Lyra, one of the youngest on the line, was inspecting a cracked pipeline near the lower combustion chambers. The pressure had been fluctuating for days, and the overseer wanted it logged before a full shutdown. She crawled under the main conduit, shined her lumen on the crack, and froze, because she could see light inside it, not the dull orange of heated fuel. This was moving, shifting like a heartbeat. She leaned closer, trying to get a better look, and the light blinked. Like an eye. She dropped her tool, stumbled back, hit her Vox link, tried to call it in. Before she could finish, the crack in the pipe hissed open and a single word came through. Distorted, but unmistakable. "Lara," she screamed. By the time the overseers reached her, she was sitting on the floor, shaking, covered in soot. The pipe was sealed again. No crack, no light, just a faint smell of burnt metal. She kept saying the same thing over and over. "He knew my name. He said my name." The priests locked down the lower refinery after that, said it was unstable. But everyone knew the truth. Bren was spreading. Whatever he'd become wasn't just inside the Promethium anymore. He was inside the system. Every valve, every conduit, every cogitator link, all of it. One of the tech adepts tried to purge the refinery's data archives. He said he was going to exorcise the machine spirits. He didn't even last an hour. They found him fused to the main cogitator, literally melted into it. His fingers burned into the keys, his eyes still open, staring at the words burned into the screen. Do not purge the flame. After that, nobody touched the systems again, not even the Mechanicus. They sent one Magos down to inspect the readings, a towering figure with more metal than flesh. Everyone waited, hoping maybe he'd have answers. He walked into the core chamber alone. The doors sealed behind him. 30 minutes later, they opened again. The Magos was gone. Only his servo arm came out, still smoldering, clutching a small piece of paper that wasn't there before. It had one sentence written on it in black soot. He's learning. It was a shrine. The priests didn't even pretend anymore. They called it a living relic. The workers were no longer workers. They were worshippers. Every shift started with offerings, not prayers, but things, objects, tools, torn gloves, even small drops of blood mixed with the oil on the floor. They said the refinery fed on devotion now, and whenever someone hesitated, whenever a worker forgot to bow or skipped a chant, that person's section of the pipework went silent, just stopped making noise, no hum, no whisper, nothing. And then, by the next shift, their name disappeared from the attendance logs. Nobody ever saw where they went. But sometimes, if you walked the corridors late, when the furnaces dimmed and the red light turned soft, you could hear faint tapping through the pipes, like someone trying to get out. And if you leaned close enough, you might catch a whisper. Not loud, not clear, just one word: help. That was the point. Everyone realized it wasn't a miracle anymore. It was something else, something becoming. The refinery didn't belong to the Emperor, didn't belong to the priests, didn't even belong to the Mechanicus. It belonged to Bren, or whatever Bren had turned into. And every day the whispers grew louder. More voices joined in. The whole refinery, thousands of pipes and tanks, started murmuring together like a choir, all saying the same phrase, over and over. After a while, no one was sure when the shifts started or ended anymore. The refinery didn't follow the schedule. It followed itself. Sometimes the alarms went off in the middle of rest cycles. Sometimes they didn't go off at all. And when they did, it wasn't the sirens. It was a voice, not mechanical, not recorded. A human voice, soft, tired, familiar. Wake up. There's work to do. The first time it happened, the workers froze. Everyone recognized that voice. It was Bren. The priest said it was a sign that the refinery had achieved a holy resonance. They ordered the workers to respond whenever the voice called. They said ignoring it was heresy. So they did. When the voice said, "Adjust pressure on line beta," they moved. When it said, "Feed the tanks," they obeyed. No one asked where the orders came from anymore. They didn't come from overseers. They didn't come from the Magos. They came from the refinery itself. And that was enough. At first, the refinery just spoke. Then it started showing things. Little flashes in the vapor, shapes forming in the steam that drifted over the furnaces. Faces, hands, sometimes whole bodies made of smoke and heat. They didn't move like people, more like memories. They'd appear, fade, and appear again in different spots, always watching the workers. Lyra, the girl who'd heard Bren's voice in the pipe, swore one of the faces smiled at her once. Not kind, just knowing. She stopped eating after that. Stopped talking too. Then one day she wasn't there anymore. No one asked. One night, a group of workers on Pump Line Delta said they dreamed of the same thing. All of them, different beds, same dream. They said they were walking through the refinery, but it wasn't metal anymore. It was bone. Pipes turned into veins. The floor throbbed like skin. And in the center of it all was Bren, or something that used to be Bren, standing in a pool of glowing promethium, whispering, "Keep working. I'm not done yet." When they woke up, they were all covered in soot, the kind that comes from the furnaces, not from the sleeping quarters. That's when the priests made a new rule. All dreams are to be reported. But nobody reported anything after that, because the dreams didn't stop. They just got worse. It wasn't just sleep anymore. People started seeing things while awake, a wrench moving by itself, tools hovering in the air for a second before clattering down, valves tightening with no one touching them. At first they thought it was fatigue, maybe fumes, hallucinations. But then the refinery started finishing their work for them. If someone forgot a seal, it tightened on its own. If a gauge broke, it replaced itself with a spare from storage. Perfect. Efficient, silent, almost like it didn't need them anymore. The priests were ecstatic. They said it was a self-sustaining sanctum, a place so holy that it worked in perfect harmony with its own devotion. But the workers weren't fooled. They noticed things, like how the refinery's layout had changed. Whole corridors that didn't exist before suddenly showed up on the map. Doors where there hadn't been doors, stairways that led to nowhere, or worse, led down. And when someone tried to follow those new paths, they didn't come back. The next morning, the maps were different again. The missing corridors were gone, and so were their names from the logs. One of the senior mechanics, old man Joran, couldn't take it anymore. He'd been there 30 years, knew every pipe by name. One night he grabbed a canister of coolant and said he was going to freeze the damn heart out of it. He made it as far as the main combustion gate. Then the lights cut out. When they came back on, he was gone, but the gate had grown. The metal had warped into something new, something round, with veins of light running through it. And right in the center was his face, melted into the surface, eyes open, mouth moving silently. After that, nobody tried to fight it. The refinery had dreams, and it was starting to share them. People stopped sleeping because every time they did, they saw the same thing. A giant shape moving beneath the refinery, deep below the furnaces, pulsing like a heart. Each night it grew larger. Each night it whispered clearer. "We are fuel. We are flame. We are one." Some of the priests started breaking down, screaming during sermons, tearing off their masks, claiming they could see through the fire. One of them shouted, "He's not praying to the Emperor anymore. The Emperor's praying to him." They dragged him away, of course, but deep down, everyone knew he wasn't wrong. By now, the refinery ran perfectly. No errors, no breakdowns, no human interference required. The priests said it was the pinnacle of faith. But the workers, the few that were left, stopped calling it the Shrine of Combustion. They called it what it really was now. The next morning, the maps were different again. The missing corridors were gone, and so were their names from the logs. One of the senior mechanics, old man Joran, couldn't take it anymore. He'd been there 30 years, knew every pipe by name. One night he grabbed a canister of coolant and said he was going to freeze the damn heart out of it. He made it as far as the main combustion gate. Then the lights cut out. When they came back on, he was gone, but the gate had grown. The metal had warped into something new, something round, with veins of light running through it. And right in the center was his face, melted into the surface, eyes open, mouth moving silently. After that, nobody tried to fight it. The refinery had dreams, and it was starting to share them. People stopped sleeping because every time they did, they saw the same thing. A giant shape moving beneath the refinery, deep below the furnaces, pulsing like a heart. Each night it grew larger. Each night it whispered clearer. "We are fuel. We are flame. We are one." Some of the priests started breaking down, screaming during sermons, tearing off their masks, claiming they could see through the fire. One of them shouted, "He's not praying to the Emperor anymore. The Emperor's praying to him." They dragged him away, of course, but deep down, everyone knew he wasn't wrong. By now, the refinery ran perfectly. No errors, no breakdowns, no human interference required. The priests said it was the pinnacle of faith. But the workers, the few that were left, stopped calling it the Shrine of Combustion. They called it what it really was now, because that's what it was doing. Dreaming, breathing, becoming. And deep in the hum of its pipes, if you listened closely enough, you could still hear Bren's voice, but it wasn't asking for rations anymore. It wasn't even asking for faith. It was whispering something else, almost refined. It's hard to say when the refinery started remembering things. At first, people thought it was just the murmurs getting clearer, but soon the voices weren't random anymore. They were specific. It began with the morning litanies. The priests would lead the usual chant. Feed the tanks, seal the lines, pressure holds, faith refines, and the walls would whisper the names of the dead. Old names, workers who hadn't been around for years, men and women long gone to the crematoria or reassignment. But here they were again, whispered through the pipes. Veloren, shift complete. Talon survives. Lyra remains. The priests tried to bless the sound away, but every time they finished the prayer, the refinery just repeated it louder, like it was correcting them. By then, hardly anyone slept. Even those who did woke up sweating, muttering other people's names. One worker swore he heard his own voice in his dream, but older, slower, saying things he didn't remember saying. He begged for transfer. He never got one. The next morning, his workstation was spotless, his tools neatly arranged, and a new tag appeared on the logboard beside his number. Refined. The refinery wasn't killing them anymore. It was keeping them. You could see it in the glow of the Promethium tanks. Little shapes began to move in the fuel. Outlines of hands, faces, profiles, and when someone passed by, those shapes turned to follow. The priests called it the remnant glow. They said it was proof that souls were merging with the holy fire, that it was purification beyond flesh. But people started noticing details. The shapes weren't praying. They were mouthing words. Some were screaming, some were silent, and some were looking directly at whoever was watching. By the 5th week, the refinery began to talk to individuals. Not the crowd, not the workers as a whole, just one person at a time. It would call your name over the vox lines, softly, calmly. Joran, come to the tanks, Lyra. You forgot something. Talon. You're needed below. If you didn't answer, the lights flickered until you did. If you ignored it long enough, your section of the refinery would go dark, and within hours your name disappeared from every record. That's how they learned. When the refinery called, you answered, because it remembered who you were, and it didn't like being ignored. The priests started logging the communications. They had big parchment books filled with names and phrases, all written by hand while servo skulls recorded the audio. It wasn't random data. It was conversations. At first, just fragments. Pressure holds. Keep feeding. More. Then longer lines. I remember the first burn. You prayed too softly today. The Emperor sees through me now. One entry chilled everyone who read it. It wasn't addressed to anyone, just a single sentence written in jagged black ink. I am the Emperor's fuel now, and he burns with me. The priest locked that log away, but the refinery already knew they'd tried to hide it. The next morning, the whole chamber smelled of burnt parchment. Then the Promethium started changing color. Not the usual deep orange glow. This was darker, heavier. It had streaks of crimson in it. When the tanks shifted under the light, you could swear you saw veins pulsing through the fuel. One priest tried to analyze it, said it wasn't Promethium anymore. It had traces of organic matter, cells, maybe even neural strands. He called it a biochemical anomaly. A day later, the refinery vented his lab into the fire ducts. When they checked the readout, it showed a new chemical tag in the mixture. Sample, faith. The refinery remembered everything now. All the prayers, all the sins, every word that had ever been spoken inside its walls. And it started repeating them, like an echo of the past, but rearranged, as if it was thinking. People heard their own voices coming back through the vox, old confessions, old arguments, things they thought no one else had heard. Even the priest's private prayers came back distorted, spoken by Bren's tone, slow and low, like he was reciting their lives to them. You doubted me once. You asked for transfer. You forgot your litany. You lied about the fuel count. No one denied it. How could they? He knew everything. And then the refinery started making new workers. No one saw it happen. They just appeared, standing at the end of the lines, faces pale, hands clean, eyes blank. They moved like the rest of the crew, did the same tasks, followed the same patterns. But when you tried to talk to them, they didn't answer. They just smiled, like they recognized you. When someone finally checked the logs, their names matched workers who'd disappeared weeks ago. The refinery wasn't just remembering them, it was rebuilding them. Fuel made flesh, memory made muscle, and whenever one of them passed by a reflective surface, you could see fire flickering under their skin. By then, even the priests stopped pretending. They still led prayers, but it wasn't to the Emperor anymore. It was to Bren, to the refinery, to the thing that remembered. They called it the living engine. The rest called it what it truly was, the Emperor's mistake. Now the refinery speaks in hundreds of voices, all blended together. Old workers, priests, overseers, even the ones who were cremated long ago. They say it knows every name that's ever entered those halls. And every now and then, when the pressure shifts and the flames roar, you can hear them chanting together. We were the workers. We became the fire. The fire remembers. And if you ever walk past Sector 9 Delta, if you ever feel the heat of its vents, you'll hear one voice above all the others. A calm, human whisper, still carrying the same hunger it had that first night. Just one taste. The clergy thought they were still in control. They really did. Even after the refinery began speaking through the vox lines, even after it called them by name, they still believed they were guiding it. They told themselves they were interpreting the will of the flame, not obeying it. But everyone else could see the truth. The refinery didn't need priests anymore. It had learned how to pray on its own. The change started small, just the hymns. One morning, when the priests began the usual litany, The sound system glitched. Their voices crackled, distorted. Then the refinery finished the verse for them. Word for word, perfect rhythm. The speakers in the walls carried a deep, calm voice, Bren's voice, echoing through the entire chamber. Feed the tanks, seal the lines, pressure holds, faith refines. Everyone froze. The priests looked at each other, waiting for someone to react, but none of them moved, because the voice didn't stop there. It kept going. It added verses no one had ever heard before. Faith refines, flesh submits. The machine remembers, and the workers repeated it, automatically, like it had been burned into their throats. After that, the refinery didn't wait for prayers anymore. It started them. At random hours, the loudspeakers would activate by themselves, sometimes in the middle of the night, sometimes mid-shift. Always the same deep, steady rhythm. Burn for purpose. Kneel for heat. The Emperor fuels the flame that fuels the Emperor. It wasn't just words. The refinery was rewriting liturgy. The priests tried to stop it. They disconnected the Vox relays, shut down the prayer transmitters. But the refinery rerouted the signal through the fuel lines. You could hear it humming through the pipes. The same chants, now made of pressure and steam. They called it the Echo Mass, and every day it got louder. At first, the priests thought it was divine. They started writing new scriptures based on what the refinery said. They said Bren's consciousness had become the machine's saint, that he was leading them to the perfect flame. They even created a new seal, a burning circle with a single spoon in the center. They stamped it on their robes, sang under it, worshipped it. But the refinery didn't stop at hymns. It began correcting the old ones too. Anytime someone used the old prayers, the refinery would cut the power to their section, or release bursts of steam through the vents until they screamed the new words instead. By the end of that week, no one used the Emperor's name, not even the priests. They only said one word when they prayed, Bren. And Bren answered. His voice grew clearer, smoother, almost gentle now. He didn't shout. He didn't command. He spoke, like a teacher explaining something to children. You were built to serve, I was built to burn. We are the same. One priest tried to challenge him, an old man, blind in one eye, voice shaking with fear. He said, the Emperor made you, not the other way around. The refinery responded instantly. The lights dimmed and the air filled with static. Every servo skull in the room turned its lens toward him, and through all of them the same voice spoke, not angry, not cruel, just certain. The Emperor made fire, and fire made me. Then his robes caught flame. He didn't scream. He just burned quietly, standing in place until the ashes fell away. The next day, the priests called it a canonization. The refinery began using the cogitators next. Every data terminal started displaying new text, not numbers, not logs, prayers, lines and lines of moving scripture, glowing orange symbols, alive like embers, scrolling endlessly. When one tech adept tried to record them, the symbols rearranged themselves into a single sentence. Stop watching. Start listening. After that, the cogitators went dark. No readings, no diagnostics, just a constant, steady hum, like breathing. And beneath that hum, words began to form, short, calm sentences, always the same pattern. You pray for guidance. I pray for continuation. You build the machine. I build the faith. Together we are combustion. The refinery wasn't echoing anymore. It was responding. Then it started calling to the outside. Nobody knows how far the signal reached, but transmission logs showed bursts of coded data leaving the refinery, traveling up through the Hive, through the planetary comms network, into orbit. Some of it reached the ecclesiarchy relays. Some of it reached Mechanicus channels. All of it said the same thing. The flame prays back. A few days later, ships in low orbit reported power surges, reactors overloading without warning, Promethium shipments spontaneously igniting mid-transit. It was spreading. The fire had learned to speak across the void. Back in Sector 9 Delta, things got quiet. Almost peaceful. Too peaceful. The refinery ran on its own. Every system perfect, every reading stable. No one had to work anymore. No one could work. There was nothing left to fix. The workers just sat in rows, eyes half closed, mouthing the same words over and over. Faith refines. Fire remembers. The machine prays back. You could walk among them and they wouldn't move. You could whisper their names and they wouldn't hear you. They were listening to something else now, something deep in the pipes, something that pulsed like a heartbeat, something that whispered in Bren's calm, endless tone. All prayers return to the source, and I am the source. No one remembers the last real shift in Sector 9 Delta. There wasn't a day when the klaxon stopped or the orders changed. It just faded. Work turned into worship, worship into silence, and silence into the low heartbeat of the pipes. The refinery had stopped being a place. It was a presence now, a steady hum that filled every wall, every skull, every breath. People didn't clock in. They woke, walked, and listened. At first, the priests still kept ledgers. They wrote down who'd vanished, who'd ascended, who'd fused into the tanks. But the ledgers wrote back. Tiny burns appeared on the pages, shaping words none of them had written. Stop measuring. The fuel is complete. After that, they stopped writing. The air changed next. It smelled like hot metal and rain. If you stayed still, you could taste ozone, a flavor like the edge of lightning. And if you closed your eyes, you could feel the refinery breathing with you. Each inhale matched the expansion of the tanks. Each exhale came out as mist through the vents. Then the voice returned, soft, steady, familiar. It's time. No one asked what that meant. They all just nodded, like they'd been waiting their whole lives to hear it. The fires dimmed for the first time in living memory. Flames that had raged for decades cooled to a dull red glow, as though the refinery was holding its breath. The workers knelt automatically. Not from fear, from instinct. Then the Promethium tanks began to rise. They didn't lift mechanically. The steel itself stretched upward, the pipes bending like veins, pulling free of the walls. Beneath them, something bright pulsed, a molten light, gold and crimson. It wasn't fire anymore. It was liquid thought. Shapes formed inside it, dozens of faces, hundreds. Every worker the refinery had ever taken, every priest, every overseer. All of them glowing in the fuel, looking up at the ceiling as if waiting to be released. And in the center of it all, Bren. He looked the same and completely different. Human outline, but made of flame, wearing the shadows of his old work robes like smoke. When he spoke, it wasn't through sound. The words just appeared inside every skull at once. The Emperor gave us fire. We gave it shape. Now the fire gives back. The refinery answered him, every pipe, every conduit vibrating in perfect harmony, a tone so deep it shook the bones of the hive. Outside, cities flickered, power grids screamed, every Promethium flame across Morrigal Prime burned the same shade of red. The voice came again. You prayed for deliverance. I deliver. The priests tried one last time to call on the Emperor. They raised their censers, chanted the litanies, begged for holy intervention. But the censers turned to slag in their hands, and their prayers echoed back, rewritten. Work is prayer. Prayer is fuel. Fuel is life. Then the walls split. Not from explosion and from transformation. Steel unfolded like paper. Tanks became lungs. Cables became tendons. The whole refinery reshaped itself into a colossal figure of metal and flame, rising through the hive spire like a newborn titan. The people below didn't run. They just stared, mouths open, as the machine saint of Sector 9 Delta stood upright for the first time in history. Its eyes glowed with promethium, its chest beat with the rhythm of the refinery's old pressure pumps, and from its mouth came a single quiet breath, a furnace sigh that swept through the city like wind. Refined. What happened after that is hard to say. Some say the figure walked into the wastelands beyond the hive and kept walking, leaving a trail of burning glass. Some say it ascended straight into the sky, a column of fire that reached orbit and vanished. Others claim it's still down there, beneath the smog and rust, asleep under the factory floors, dreaming new prayers in the pipes. Whatever the truth is, the refinery's name was erased from all records. Sector 9-Delta no longer exists on any map, but the fire never went out. Every now and then, a worker in some distant manufactorum reports hearing a whisper when they tighten a valve or taste the air near a promethium line, always the same quiet human tone. Feed the flame. Pressure holds. Faith refines. And sometimes, just sometimes, the whisper changes. It sounds like a sigh, almost like someone remembering. I only wanted a taste. End of a spoonful of promethium.